It's another beautiful day for baseball in Los Angeles. And baseball podcast. Josh Schaefer and Blake Harris cover everything Dodgers right here on Inside the Ravine.
How's it going, everyone, and welcome to a brand new episode of Inside the Ravine. Joining me after a quick wardrobe change is my co-host, Josh Schaefer. I'm your host for the evening, Blake Harris. Josh, we came to the realization that every time we record an episode, you're either in the Ontario Reign offices, where you're wearing something, because you're in the facility, Ontario Reign, or when you record in your apartment, usually it's because you're coming home from work, where you're still wearing your Ontario Reign shirt. So we decided to switch things up today. So maybe for the first time ever, you're rocking something other than Ontario Reign gear, but the backup choice is the least bit surprising.
Yeah, no, I've got a new. I actually got this over the holidays. It's my new USC shirt. I grew up a USC football fan. Obviously, you and I both went to Arizona State, and let me just say that signing day, the Valley has officially been activated. I don't know if you can think of all of the different things that you can activate, Blake. None of them are more activated than the Valley right now because Arizona State is buzzing. But I did grow up a USC fan, and I realized I don't have any USC shirts anymore. As shocking as that might sound. But I don't have any. So for Christmas, I thought I'd love to get a USC shirt. And there was a shocking number of lack of shirts that just said USC football or something. So I got this little Fight On shirt, and I think this might be the first time I've ever worn it. So inside the Ravine, baby.
Had to come out of the closet at some time. But yes, activate the Valley or whatever it was you said. ASU. I went to bed last night thinking this is going to be a 3-win team, and now I'm going to go to bed tonight thinking, you know what? This could be a 5-win team. Maybe a 6-win team, Josh. We could go bowling.
In 2 years? 15.
In 2 years. But so if ASU's going bowling, Josh, I want to transition this really quickly as we're talking about bowling, because this is something that you just brought up right before we started the show, and it's something that had to be discussed. Now, this weekend is FanFest. A lot of people are going to be going. A lot of people are going to be excited to meet all of their favorite Dodgers players. But unfortunately, Josh, one player that will not be in attendance is Mookie Betts. Now, nothing serious came up. Not getting surgery, not getting anything. But Josh, can you explain to the listeners out there why they shouldn't be too concerned that Mookie Betts will not be attending FanFest this weekend?
Yeah, so Mookie is in Indianapolis, participating in the U.S. Open for bowling,
which apparently is a thing.
It is, in fact.
Also, how many U.S. Opens are there? I know we got the one for golf. We got, I think, one for tennis. There's a surfing one out here.
Yes, there is. There is a surfing one. Apparently, there's one for bowling. I'm sure that there's probably croquet.
Yeah, maybe badminton.
Polo. Maybe has one, the Polo U.S. Open.
Yes, I think there actually is.
Yeah, I don't know. There's got to be at least six in like legitimate sports. Yeah, so he's competing in the U.S. Open for bowling right now. I'm trying to get an update on how he's been faring, but as of last night, apparently he was tied with the number one bowler in the world, which is ridiculous. But yeah, so I guess that's kind of what's going on right now with Mookie Betts. So I don't know. I heard that the Dodgers. I'm actually just finding this out. I just found this on Twitter, so I'm gonna take this with a grain of salt, but I do want to read that I've seen this on Twitter from multiple different people. It's an email from the Dodgers that says, "You're receiving this email because you purchased a meet and greet package with Mookie Betts on Saturday, February 4th at the Dodgers Fan Fest. Due to a personal scheduling conflict, Mookie is now unavailable to attend. We apologize for any inconvenience this may have caused." So Mookie's not going to be there because he's too busy bowling strikes instead of swinging at them. So Mookie, Apparently, he was tied with number 1 in the world yesterday. I have no further updates. I am not a bowling reporter, but the shirt is good. The shirt that he's got on in this photo is good. It's like a black shirt with like a collar, so it's your typical bowling shirt, and it's got like gray stripes across and then a thick red stripe in the middle, and on the back in cursive it says Mookie Betts. So, dude's looking good.
I'm still laughing. We need to like copyright or trademark that you just said. He's bowling strikes instead of swinging at them.
All right, you know what? Inside the
good.
Ravine Twitter's tweeting it mid-show.
There you go. So
Mid-show.
Mookie Betts, he's bowling. I mean, he's like on record saying essentially, I think like once he retires from baseball, he like wants to pursue bowling full time. And the fact that it's one thing to have like a hobby like this. I mean, we see it all the time with professional athletes where they're really good at golf, they're really good at these other sports, but Mookie Betts is literally elite at bowling. Like if he were to retire from baseball today and pursue the MLB, the Major League Bowling, like I don't know what the official title is, but he would probably be one of the best bowlers in the Major League of Bowling or whatever, league it is that I'm sure is on ESPN 8 the Ocho every year or so. Yeah. But Mookie Betts, hey, let's hopefully he qualifies and wins the U.S. Open for bowling.
Yes.
So it just goes to show he can do it all. The dude can literally do it all. So enough bowling talk, Josh. Let's talk about the latest. I mean, maybe
here's your inside scoop on how our tweets are formulated.
Okay,
Blake, what do you think? I'm saying confirmed in all caps. Mookie Betts bowls strikes. He doesn't take them, or he doesn't swing at them. What do you think? Doesn't take them.
Doesn't take them. Well, does he take them? Because if he doesn't take them, I guess he has a good eye and he's drawn a walk. But if he takes them, maybe he has a good eye.
If he doesn't swing at strikes, it means he's chasing. Can you poke holes in this? Because I think now...
I don't know, man.
You know what? We're going for it.
Go for it. All right, I'll transition.
We don't have a social media person. We just go for it.
Yeah, we do it all ourselves. Josh, while you get on that, let me pitch the show. Make sure to, guys, listen to the show wherever you guys get your podcast. We're on the Odyssey app because we are brought to you by Odyssey Sports. You guys can also listen to us on Spotify and on Apple Podcasts. You guys can also follow the show on whatever social media app you prefer to use. We like to use them all. We're on YouTube, we're on Twitter, we're on Instagram, we're on TikTok. Just search Inside the Ravine. You'll find us there. You guys can get all your clips, get all your full shows, get all that fun stuff over on social media. Again, whatever one you prefer. We're not going to direct you to one specific app, but hey, if you want to follow us on all four, we'll be okay with that as well. But Josh, moving on to the latest Dodgers news, well, it's going to be quick because essentially there is none. The last time we recorded, we interviewed Ryan Pepia, which, by the way, make sure you guys go and check that episode out if you guys haven't done so yet. There are so many clips from that interview, Josh. I'm still posting them on the socials because there were so many great moments from the show. So we're still posting clips from that interview that happened, I guess technically 2 weeks ago, but also a week ago because of technical difficulties trying to record that. But no Dodger news really has happened over the course of the last couple weeks. The Dodgers have signed a couple guys to minor league contracts, so maybe there are some guys that are going to contribute at some point in 2023, but nothing really too major. I guess some good news is that yesterday the Dodgers, avoided arbitration with Tony Gonsolin, agreed to a pretty, team-friendly deal, 2 years for about $6 million. I don't have the exact numbers in front of me, Josh, but it was something crazy like the Dodgers filed for $3 million, Tony Gonsolin filed for like $3.3 million. I guess they met in the middle. They avoided arbitration, which is something you want to do if you're a team and a player. So Tony Gonsolin was an all-star last year, and you get him back for a nice whopping $3 million per season.
Yeah, so Gonsolin, here's the official numbers. Gonsolin filed at $3.4 million. The Dodgers filed at $3 million. And obviously there were the 10 arbitration eligible players for the Dodgers this season. Gonsolin was one of them. So they kind of meet in the middle there. And instead of just kind of trying to avoid arbitration just in the actual sense of the term, they made the exception for Gonsolin to make that multi-year deal. So the Dodgers do agree to terms. So it's 2 years. It comes out to $6.65 million for the 2 years, which if you go back and you look at the 3.4 for Tony, $3 million for the Dodgers, that's 6.65. Divide that by 2. That's literally right in the middle of 3.4 and 3. So that's where that number comes from. So I like that. I like that they're able to meet in the middle. I think it's a perfect deal. And again, I mean, he had a breakout year in 2022. He was an all-star. He went 16-1. And he was reliable for the Dodgers in the long run. So I think probably his worst performance of the year was the half inning in the All-Star game, and that doesn't even really matter. And It's not like he was bad. He just gave up a couple hits. So it's like, and I think especially starting the year for the Dodgers, there's not going to be a Walker Buehler to start. I think a lot of people have been circulating some questions about the Dodgers heading into spring training and heading into the season. Some of them warranted, some of them not. We'll talk about that later. But I think Gonsolin is a guy that the Dodgers can rely on for the most part, and I think that's a big piece moving forward.
Yeah, these arbitration cases are always kind of weird because obviously the teams, they're going to be on the cheaper side because they want to save as much money as they can, so you can't really blame the Dodgers. So Tony Gonsolin, like you said, I think he filed for 3.4. Dodgers filed for 3. Ultimately, they kind of meet in the middle. Again, I'm glad that they didn't actually go to a hearing over this because at the end of the day, going into a court and arguing in front of a judge why you're worth 3.4 while your own team argues why you're worth 3 million, that's just something that don't want to happen on both sides. I think it's ridiculous that something like this even happens, but these players, they got to get paid. The teams, they got to save money. So good thing both sides came to an agreement because like you said, I think there was like 10 players or something that were no problem, but this was the one that was kind of a little bit iffy. So much needed for Tony Gonsolin and the Dodgers. He was great last season, like you said. Aside from the one little blurb he had in the All-Star game, he was fantastic, and the Dodgers are going to rely on him much more again this season. But Josh, no more news to really get to, but something I want to talk about, and we can spend some time on this before we go to the Q&A for the second half of this episode, and that's the fact that we've kind of been talking about this during the offseason, but there just seems to be this just narrative that the Dodgers aren't going to be that good in 2023. They lost a lot of talent this offseason, guys like Trey Turner, Tyler Anderson, Justin Turner, and a bunch of other, key contributors, and many people are just writing the Dodgers off for not just winning the World Series, winning the division, being a playoff team. And Freddie Freeman, he was at this event in Los Angeles yesterday. He spoke, gave a lengthy interview, but I clipped together a 45-second piece that I want to throw on this right now so our listeners can hear, because I thought he said something that was very important. It really stood out to me because he's not wrong when he spoke to reporters about this.
The division, so we retook it last year. I think our team is very, very good. Yes, when you lose Trey Turner, that is obviously everyone sees that, and losing Trey, and obviously losing Cody, who's been such a staple for this organization for a long time, and obviously the big red man, Justin Turner. Just a special person, special player, meant so much to the Dodgers organization. But Boston's getting a good one. They're going to love him there, just like we love him here still, no matter what. But yes, I still love our team. We got a really good one. When you have Mookie Betts, Will Smith, Max Muncy, JD Martinez, and then you can just roll off our pitching. I think we still got a really good team at this point.
Yeah, so like Freddie Freeman said, the Dodgers still have a really good team. Maybe they're not going to be winning 111 games like this past season. Maybe they're not the current betting odds, favorite to win the World Series. But this is a team that is capable of winning 95-plus games, and I believe as of right now is probably the favorite to win the NL West.
Yeah, I mean, he said it perfectly, too. I mean, something that we had talked about on a former podcast, or at one of our recent podcasts, was sure, you lose a couple of those guys, but as Freddie pointed out, Freddie Freeman, Mookie Betts, Will Smith, and then all these other guys. I mean, again, Max Muncy and Chris Taylor are a year removed from having career years. Chris Taylor was an all-star. Like, one season has changed that. Maybe 2 seasons has changed that. But that doesn't mean – and I'm going to go back. But in the same breath, people have said, like, oh, but the Dodgers are losing Cody Bellinger. I'm like, you're right. But the players that the Dodgers have now have proven to be more consistent offensively and more reliable offensively than Cody Bellinger has the last 3 years. And Cody Bellinger's the one that's not here anymore. But he's right. Losing Trey Turner is a big one. Losing Justin Turner, who's meant, everything to this organization these past 10 years, that's a big one. The guys that are still here are a lot of big ones. And every time we bring this up, I completely forget to talk about the pitching. Like, everyone is coming back except for Walker Buehler, who's out injured with Tommy John surgery. But other than that, everybody is coming back. You could rattle off the entire pitching staff from starters to relievers, rattle off the whole bullpen. And that's a list that just bolsters this claim that the Dodgers are going to be right back in the thick of it again. And, I don't really understand the whole narrative of, it's going to be a down year for the Dodgers. I'll be honest, I think that the Padres being as good as they are and beating the Dodgers in the playoffs last year has, it's played a huge role in that, and rightfully so. The Padres deserve the recognition that they've, received. They went on a little bit of a run last year. They beat the Dodgers in the NLDS. By all means, the Padres are a legit contender, but so are the Dodgers. And I think that losing a couple guys doesn't really change that. And again, you fill the void with a couple of those guys with a player like JD Martinez. And then it's about, remember the influx of prospects that the Dodgers had within the last couple of years. Will Smith gets called up and Gavin Lux gets called up. And then kind of one by one, you have these other guys that, Miguel Vargas, makes a couple of cameos for the Dodgers. And obviously he played a lot, but for the most part, not as much as I think we've seen guys like Will Smith and Chris Taylor, Gavin Lux appear over the last couple of years. But it's because the Dodgers brought those prospects up and they stuck. You remember when Corey Seager came up. You remember when Cody Bellinger came up. And then you remember when Smith and Lux came up. And these last, year or two, it's kind of been prospect comes up and plays a little bit, and that's kind of it, right? And Vargas stuck at the end of the season. But now I think it's that time again to bring these guys back up and give those guys that opportunity, because we're at that point in their development. We're at that point with the spots that are available on the 40-man and on the major league roster. So that's where we're at right now, and that's why you might see a couple of these younger guys come back up that people haven't seen in the big leagues before, and that's fine. That doesn't mean that the Dodgers aren't going to be a legitimate contender. It just means that those spots are available now, and they haven't been the last couple of years.
Yeah, so I just looked at the current odds, and I don't have the year by year what they've been in recent years, but this has to be the lowest the Dodgers odds have been to win the NL West in quite some time. They're currently a minus 140, whereas the Padres are a plus 140. And for those that aren't really too familiar with betting, minus 140 seems like really good odds for the Dodgers if you want to make some money, because usually every year they're about minus 250, minus 230, something crazy like that. So betting wise, a lot of people think it's going to be a pretty close race. And Josh, when you think about last year, it's tough because they did win 111 games. So 99.6% chance they're not going to replicate that. But this is a team that could win 100 games. And yeah, you finish 11 games worse than you did the previous year, but you're still a 100-win team. It's going to be so difficult for a lot of fans, especially, to really think that this is a very good team when they're not going to be on pace like they've been in years past. But when you take the current team, the way it's constructed, which, by the way, when I saw that clip of Freddie Freeman talking yesterday, this has happened to me, I think, 3 or 4 times this offseason, Josh. Maybe it's just me. Do you keep forgetting about JD Martinez? Because every time I think about the Dodgers lineup, I think about the Dodgers in 2023 for some reason. Maybe it's because it happened the day before Justin Turner, I think, left for the Red Sox. It just was kind of forgotten about. But I completely forget that JD Martinez is going to be a solid bat in the middle of the lineup. Again, I don't know if it's just me, but I keep forgetting. But Josh, we're going to play a little fun game here. I don't have a name for the game because I just thought of it on the spot, but we're going to be comparing last year's team to this year's team. So it's kind of tough because you don't want to really pick and choose, but let's just start with Trey Turner. You lose him as your starting shortstop, obviously one of the 3 or 4 best shortstops in all of baseball. You are going to be taking a huge downgrade there, whether it's Gavin Lux, Miguel Rojas, Chris Taylor, whoever's going to be playing there, they're going to be more than capable, but it's going to be a downgrade at the position. Aside from that, Josh, I think for the most part, the Dodgers didn't necessarily take any hits all across the board, maybe with the exception of starting pitching by going from Tyler Anderson to Noah Syndergaard. Because let's look at center field. People think the Dodgers lost Cody Bellinger. It's a huge loss. But really, is it that big of a loss? I mean, he's had one of the worst bats in baseball the last couple of years. Now you're going to platoon center field with Trace Thompson, who was fantastic last year, James Outman, who in a small sample size really showed out, and in the minor leagues last year was fantastic. So maybe defensively you're taking a slight, just a slight downgrade, but offensively you can only go up, I think, from here. Any production you're getting from Thompson, Outman, Chris Taylor, it's going to be better than what you got from Cody Bellinger this past season. I know Justin Turner spent a lot of time at third base, but he spent a lot of time as the designated hitter as well. I know in the second half JT really turned things around, but I think a lot of people would agree JD Martinez is a much better bat compared to Justin Turner at this point in their careers. So you're upgrading at that spot. You're getting Chris Taylor back, who missed a lot of time last year, had some numerous injuries, his worst season as a Dodger. He likely can't get any worse, so Chris Taylor's going to improve. And you also have Max Muncy, who in the first 2/3 of the season, he was, god-awful. He was one of the worst hitters in all of baseball. Turned things around at the very end. But if the Dodgers are able to get the Max Muncy of old, it's like you're kind of adding a player as well. So you look at all these components, Josh. Again, they're not going to win 111 games, but I think a lot of people just aren't realizing how good this team can potentially be if all things click and come together.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. And I think that there are some upgrades. But again, I mean, the Dodgers just need a guy like JD Martinez, wherever they decide to put him in, to be similar to what he did last year.
Yeah.
All you need from him is to be consistent. Like, he's won a World Series, he's won multiple Silver Sluggers, he's a 5-time All-Star. And last year, at the age of 34, at the age of, 34, 35 this past year. He hit 275, had, 62 RBIs or something like that. He only had 16 home runs. But remember, we talked about this before. Like, his extra base hits total, were there.
Yeah.
He had 36 doubles last year. Or not last year. Sorry, that was his projected for this next year. He had 43 doubles last year. He had 42 the year before. Like, the dude still hits the cover off the baseball. And you look at a guy like Justin Turner, and the numbers are very, very similar. They're very similar. He had a few, percentage points higher in terms of batting average, but a lot of those other numbers are there. And if you really need him to be a DH, that's the guy who's going to fill that role. And again, you look at somebody like Miguel Rojas, you just need the guy to hit the baseball a little bit because you're getting elite defensive play at shortstop now, which you didn't get with Trey Turner. Was he one of the most consistent and reliable and best hitters in baseball over the last 5 seasons? Absolutely. You're not going to get that replicated with anybody who plays short, with anybody who bats in the same position in the lineup. Nobody's going to hit like that. But your defense is going to improve significantly. And that's no disrespect to Trey Turner. That's just the role that he played. He was a good shortstop and an elite hitter. Now the Dodgers are going to have somebody who they just need to be fairly reliable at the plate, and you're going to have an elite defensive player. So, I mean, you can kind of, look at it however you want. And, the Dodgers the last couple of years have been an explosive offensive team. But maybe they still have that somewhere in them this year. If they might not score as many home runs as they have score as many runs as they have the last couple of years, or hit as many home runs. But, I think that maybe the identity changes a little bit, but not that much. The core of the team for the most part is still there. Like, Justin Turner's gone, sure, but it's really not that different.
Yeah, and like you said, I think we talked about that in one of our previous episodes. Defensively at shortstop, you're getting a massive upgrade by having Rojas out there, and if he hits league average, that's something that you'll take for the Dodgers. And the thing with LA is, we talk about Miguel Vargas, James Outman, Michael Busch, who we'll just make sure to mention on every episode. But
yes,
the Dodgers have so many of these rookies where we haven't seen much from them. We haven't seen much of a sample size. But if they contribute, if they live up to potential, the Dodgers are going to have another wave of young talent that is going to be insanely good, that is really going to help the Dodgers. And again, just talking now about the pitching, Yeah, you lose Tyler Anderson. Yeah, you lose Andrew Heaney. Clayton Kershaw's coming back. You have Julio Urias. Dustin May's going to be healthy for the first time in a couple years. Tony Gonsolin, we talked about him earlier in the episode, was an all-star this past season. Noah Syndergaard, he's going to be replacing Tyler Anderson. He's shown in the past he's capable of being an all-star caliber pitcher. And then you go to the Dodgers bullpen. I know Blake Trinan, I think, is going to miss time again because he got surgery, so I don't know what his ETA is, but you're going to have Daniel Hudson back, who's probably going to be seeing a solid amount of action as your closer. Evan Phillips, Yency Almonte, Alex Vesia. I'm going down the list. Shelby Miller, he's going to be a project. The Dodgers have the pitching. Is it as good as last year? That remains to be seen. But when looking at this team top to bottom, I still think that they should be the favorite to win the NL West. And Josh, we've done all this without mentioning Mookie Betts, who is still one of the 5 to 10 best players in all of baseball. Freddie Freeman, who is one of the 5 best hitters in all of baseball. Will Smith, who's one of the best catchers in all of baseball. So it really is incredible how it just seems like there are so many, maybe it's just on Twitter, just Twitter's, the best and worst place to be, but so many people seem to be writing this off this Dodger team, and I don't know why, but I kind of like that they might be entering this season with kind of this underdog mentality. And I think that's honestly something that's been missing the last couple of years from them, because especially this past October, we talked about this numerous times. Watching that Dodger-Padre series, a Padre hitter would draw a walk, and everyone would be out of the dugout. They'd be going nuts. The Dodgers team, they just seemed lifeless. They seemed like, okay, we're the team that should be winning, so we're just going to go about our business. But again, when you look at that Dodger 2020 run, every play, every moment, they were out of the dugout. They were going nuts. That team was just fired up at all times. So maybe by being an underdog kind of a team, and again, it's really dumb to say they're an underdog when they're favorites to win the division and their win projection is probably like 95. But I think maybe entering the season for the first time in who knows how long of not being the World Series favorite, maybe that's going to benefit the Dodgers. Maybe that's something that's going to, give them a chip on their shoulder. Maybe, like you said, earlier in the episode, playing meaningful baseball in September, something like that. So I kind of like this. I think it's going to be good for the Dodgers, and we'll see what happens in 2023, because I don't think I'd be surprised if they win 100 games, but I also wouldn't be surprised if they maybe win 88 games this year.
Yeah, and I think that's a good mentality for them to have going in. And you've got that sense of, take care of business, know what you're capable of, but also kind of have that, optimism about the season too. And that chip on your shoulder, which I think the Dodgers are probably going to have after last year, where everyone wrote them off as, the clear-cut World Series favorite, and then a couple of months later wrote them off as being done, Right. So I think that's a good mentality for them to have moving forward.
So it's going to be a fun season for 2023. The underdog Dodgers, who are projected to win the division. But we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, Josh, we're going to wrap up this episode with questions from the listeners. All right, we are back. Josh, it's time to wrap up the show. We are going to be answering questions from the listeners. And as always, we turn to social media to have you guys ask us your questions. So if you would like to ask a question for a future episode, make sure to follow us on social media, specifically on Twitter and on Instagram at Inside the Ravine. So that way, whenever we post about it, you guys can let us know your questions. Josh, I'm going to turn things over to Twitter first and foremost right now. Mookie Season wants to know, and we kind of just talked about this, but I guess I'll kind of rework this question a little, because they want to know, should we be worried next year due to all the holes in the field? So we've talked about this numerous times about how still kind of questionable when it comes to where you're going to put guys. So as of right now, Josh, February 1st, literally less than 2 months away from opening day. 1 being you're not concerned at all. 10 being you are absolutely terrified. Where would your worry meter be for right now when it comes to where you're going to put guys in the field?
I'm really not that concerned at all. And I think for me personally, I think I'm a little bit hesitant to really go one way or another. So I'll go 5 right down the middle. I hope that's not a cop-out answer, but it's just too I'm more optimistic than anything. Like I'm interested to see how it shakes out. But I'm not really worried about any, holes necessarily. But I'm also not going to sit here and be like, nah, we're fine. Like we're fine with what we're seeing now. Like we don't need the Dodgers to do this, or that. Like I'm going to be cautiously optimistic. So I'm going to go right down the middle.
Yeah, I'm going to go with like a 2 because honestly, it's no different than it was last year with the exception of defensively you're upgrading at shortstop because second base is going to be some sort of combo of what? Gavin Lux, Max Muncy, Miguel Vargas, Chris Taylor, third base, essentially the same thing. So that's what it was last year. And again, you're upgrading at shortstop, so I'm not necessarily worried whatsoever. I think, they're going to be just fine. This next question comes from Scotty. It's a two-parter, Josh. We love two-parters.
Yes.
Which Dodger will bounce back from a down year last year, and which one who played well last year is going to regress this season?
That's a good question. I'm going to take Max Muncy to bounce back. I know that we've talked about this before and about how he started to get things going a little bit at certain parts of the season, but for the most part, he wasn't there last year. He hit 196 overall, still hit 21 home runs. So I'll give him that. Like the power is obviously still there. He's going to rack up the home runs. He's going to rack up the RBIs, but he was so inconsistent last year. I think he's more consistent this year. I think he goes back to kind of that 2020 pace when obviously it was the shorter season, which I think now is something that we definitely have to kind of, look back and acknowledge. But, these last two seasons, back in not even 2020, but in 2019 and 2021 is two all-star seasons. Not only was he just hammering the baseball, but he had a pretty decent average. He was above league average. He was more consistent at the plate. And if you look back at some of his past seasons, like 2022, 2020, the average and the WAR just weren't really there. The OPS they just weren't there. But his two all-star seasons were two really big years. I would anticipate something a little bit more. At least that's what I'm going to expect from Muncy. For the Dodgers, something that I want to say this was 2 episodes ago, and I said that I was expecting big things from Gavin Lux. I think I'm going to temper my expectations a little bit, not a ton. I think that he's going to be a very reliable player for the Dodgers this year, but for the sake of answering the question, I think if I would to pick a player to regress a little bit, I think maybe I would pick Gavin Lux just because I thought he was super reliable last year. In the past, it was kind of like, runner on third, 2 outs in a big inning, and Gavin Lux was coming up, you'd be like, all right, like whatever. But then this past year, it was Gavin Lux getting a hit. So I think that we had a lot more confidence watching a player like him come up to the plate in big situations. So I think he maybe regresses a little bit just for the sake of answering this question. But obviously, I could totally see him have a career year. It's really, for me, it's going one way or the other.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I was going to say for the first part, Max Muncy seems like an easy one, but since you took it, I'll go a different direction. I think Chris Taylor is a good candidate to bounce back. I mean, again, he was pretty bad last season. He had a number of just different injuries and really just didn't impact the Dodgers in any way. And this is a guy, when he's right, I think he's, one of the more underrated players in all of baseball. So if the Dodgers are able to get Chris Taylor to bounce back, doesn't have to be an all-star like he was a couple of years ago, but if he can be an above-average hitter, get those strikeout numbers down literally 5%, we'll take that at this rate because I think he had the highest strikeout rate in baseball last year. So if he can get that down just a little bit, if he can stay healthy, because he provides so much defensive versatility for the Dodgers, you could put him literally anywhere you want. I think it'll be huge for them. And then when it comes to regressing, maybe like a Trace Thompson, just because he did have that stretch where he was just like the best hitter on the Dodgers. Like the numbers he was putting up were insane. Then he kind of came back down to earth in the final month. In the postseason, didn't really do anything at all. So I think for Trace Thompson, maybe people need to kind of limit their expectations just a little because he was so good. But if he's still able to, hit 10, 15 home runs, play solid defense in the outfield, and, post a slightly above league average OPS, I think the Dodgers will take that. But I don't think, because at one point, I think he had like an OPS of like 1,000 with the Dodgers in his first like month and a half. He was absolutely out of this world. But Josh, we're going to move now to Instagram, get some of these questions up right now. 55 J.A. Evans, who do you predict will be closing games for the Dodgers to start the season? So, Josh, let's say it's game 1 against the D-backs, which, by the way, opening day is at 7 p.m., which should be a crime. Opening day should be a day game. Like,
Agreed.
you cannot have a 7 p.m. game, but let's say it's opening day against the D-backs. Dodgers are up 4-2 in the ninth. Julio just gave you 7 innings. Let's say Julio gave you 8 innings because that'll help with the question. Everyone's available. Who are you going to out of the pen in the ninth inning?
Well, for me, I think at some point you're going to want Trinan, I think, maybe in that situation. But for me right now, going Evan Phillips. I mean, this is kind of the question that we had in the postseason as well. So that's who I would take, and I think that's an easy pick for me.
Yeah, I'm sure once spring training rolls around, Dave starts talking with the media, I'm sure we'll get our answer as to what's going to happen with the closer role. If I were to guess, I think it's probably going to be a closer by committee this season, something I've personally been in favor of the last couple of years because I think you want to have your best guys for the best matchups. You don't want to lock a guy in for the ninth inning. So I think it could be a plethora of guys, but I'm with you. I think it's going to be either Evan Phillips or I'm going to go with another guy. I mentioned earlier in this episode, he's kind of the forgotten guy just because he got hurt last year midway through the season, but Daniel Hudson was insanely good for the Dodgers last season. Again, it's easy for people to forget about him because he got hurt, I think in June or so, I want to say. But at the time, he was one of the Dodgers' best relievers, and his injury certainly hurt the bullpen going down to the final wire, especially in the postseason. Dodgers could have used him. So I'm going to go with Daniel Hudson or Evan Phillips as the first save of the season. That should be like one of those prop bets, like who gets the first Dodger save of the season, because it can be a number of guys. Alex Vesia, Yency Almonte, Trinan. Again, I'm pretty sure Trinan's out for like at least the first half of the season. Yeah. I think he got the surgery, which is still like no one really knows exactly what went down. But a lot of guys can be closing games for the Dodgers. But then again, we said that a year ago at this time, Josh. And then one day, about middle of March, you get the text from me saying, what the F did the Dodgers just do? And they acquired Craig Kimbrell for AJ Pollock. So until we see it, maybe a closer comes in, but as of right now, I'm going to go closer by committee. Josh, we have time for one more question, and this comes from my man, Ernie. I'm not going to try to say the last name, Carrillo. Man, I'm very white, Josh. I should get my girlfriend to say that last name, Carrillo. Hopefully I said that right, Ernie. And he's a bobblehead guy, Josh, just like me, but he wants to know, what is your favorite Dodgers bobblehead and why? Now, I know it's probably a little easier for you to pick because your collection's not as big, whereas mine is, well, mine. So if you're not able to answer it, Josh, we can make it a two-parter where you say, what is a Dodger bobblehead you would like to see them give away this year?
No, my favorite one for the longest time was the Kirk Gibson bobblehead and the bobble fist. So I had that. That was my favorite one that I had. I'll stick to the ones that I have. Then one that I thought was cool, but didn't think that I was gonna like go to the game or anything, was the Max Muncy Get It Out of the Ocean one, which you gave me. So I actually do have that one. Then that one was probably my favorite. Currently, my favorite one is my newest one, which is a game that I paid to go to last season specifically for the bobblehead, and it's the Kershaw with the World Series ring and the gold outline and fleck on the jerseys. That's my favorite one. I put that one on the top. I'm looking at it right now, so I've got my second shelf on my bookcase is all bobbleheads, and then the top shelf is more like memorable, like personal things, sports stuff. So I've got a Vin Scully one that's up there that I like. I've got a Bob Miller one from the LA Kings. And then I've got the Kershaw one up there. So that's the only player that I have up there other than the two broadcasters. So,
yeah, I mean, it is getting so difficult now for us bobblehead collectors because in the old days, Josh, I'm going to give you a little history lesson here, but in the good old days in the early 2000s, they would give away only 3 bobbleheads per season. Then as the years started going on, they started giving away 4, maybe 5, kind of 6. But it's at the point now where I think they've already announced like bobbleheads through June, and there's like 8 or 9 or 10 of them. Every year the Dodgers are giving away 20, so I have probably over 100 behind me on my shelves, and I have a Google Doc with all the ones I don't have, and there's well over 100 that I don't have because the Dodgers are just giving away 20 every year. So it's too tough for me to figure out which one's my absolute favorite. There are 2 that I have that are like, I guess, personal favorites as a collector. There's a Tommy Lasorda one that I got of him wearing this suit from, I think it was given out at the 2006 World Series to, I guess, media members. They only made like 20 or 30 of them, so it's a very rare one that I was able to win in a raffle. And another one is a Bob Hope bobblehead of him wearing a Dodgers jersey that I guess was given away at the top deck 20 years ago. You know, they only made, I think, 500 of them, and apparently it's one of the more, I think it's actually the most rare Dodgers bobblehead out there.
Wow.
It's hard to find. I have one, and my dad has one, so there's only 500 of them out there, but between the 2 Harrises, we have 2. And next episode, Josh, we're going to be recording. I'm going to be saying, yeah, my apartment was broken into, and my Bob Hope bobblehead is no more. But those are probably the 2 that are probably my most prized collections. Yeah. But yeah, there's stuff you can't really tell, but I got way too many.
Yeah, there's a lot of them.
It's going to
suck. Them in person.
It's going to suck whenever I have to move. I'm going to have to individually bubble wrap these up one by one. That's not going to be fun. Josh, I think you'll be over helping me do that, because that's what co-hosts are for, to do the things that we don't want to do. But
now that we live close by now.
That does wrap up this week's episode of Inside the Ravine. Again, if you guys want to ask us a question for a future episode, make sure to follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Inside the Ravine. You can also find us on TikTok at Inside the Ravine and on YouTube. Just go to YouTube and search Inside the Ravine. You guys can find the full episodes there. We are brought to you, as always, by Odyssey Sports. You can listen to us on the Odyssey app and on Spotify and on Apple Podcasts, or wherever else you might get your podcasts. Again, if there's another app out there and you listen to us on there, hey, all the power to you. We appreciate it. Josh, any final words before we head out for the week?
Have a nice week.
Thank you, Josh.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Well, as always, guys, thank you so much for listening. We really do appreciate it. If you guys can give us a review, give us a 5-star rating, give us a like, or whatever they ask you to do on those apps you listen to, we would greatly appreciate it. Really helps out the show. For Josh Schaefer, this has been Blake Harris. Thank you guys so much for listening, and enjoy the rest of your week, wherever you may be.